Welcome to What to Do When, a podcast for when you're feeling a little lost, low, or lonely in life. This is a space for honest conversations about just how damn terrifying, messy, and confusing life can be. Figuring out who you are, healing your wounds, finding the right partner, building an amazing career, it's a lot. We're going to open up, unpack, and normalize all the big, complicated emotions and struggles in life. The anxiety, the self-doubt, the overwhelm, and the other spirals it's so easy to fall into. Because I find that the more that we open up and get real, the more we can learn, and the less pressure that we feel to have it all figured out and to be perfect all of the time. And this is the sweet spot where healing happens. So let's get into it. Howdy, my friends. I have been honestly a little bit blue this week, if I'm completely honest. And something that has been helping me greatly has been watching or rewatching for the bloody 100th time Ted Lasso. And God, I love it. If you've not watched Ted Lasso, please do yourself a favor and go and watch that show. There is nothing more feel good than that show. They've just nailed it. They've absolutely nailed it. And I heard rumors that they may be making another season, and I'm absolutely thrilled. But anyway, that's what's been going on in my life. I've been feeling a bit blue this week, a little bit sad. Not for any particular reason, it's just been with me. And rather than telling you, that I've been doing all these things to help that sadness go away, all I've really been focusing on, if I'm honest, is just getting through what is a little bit of a tough week and getting through having that sadness with me and trying to let it actually be okay that I'm having this week, that I'm having this time, and that the emotion or the feeling that's present with me. And doing things that feel good and are within my capacity and feel supportive, like watching Ted Lasso, like reading a book, like going for a beach walk, like buying a coffee and enjoying it, and sometimes I tend to overcomplicate that dealing with a tough time. And it can end up feeling like you have to do 3,000,001 different things to feel, in an effort to feel better. You've got to meditate and journal and get it out and analyze it and figure it out. And sometimes I think it serves us to really just give ourselves permission to just be where we are and to just feel what we feel. And if that means that you have a week like me where I've just been feeling a little bit more blue, a little bit more melancholy, that's probably the right word for me, and that it's actually been okay. And all I've been doing is just my best to not judge myself for this. And good old Ted Lasso, thank you. Thank you for whoever created that show. It's just been helping. It's been helping a lot, and I'm appreciative of it. Right, so let's get into this, and this is a cool episode that I have been thinking about for the last week. And it's about self-love. It's about getting high on your own supply. And I was pretty chuffed with myself for coming up with that title, if I'm very honest. Because self-love, we've been told a few things about it. We, as a society, have made it feel like self-love is a little bit narcissistic, that focusing on self-love and saying and speaking about it, that self-love is selfish or it's cringy. That's probably the word that I struggle with the most. And so in today's episode, I'd like us to talk about why that is, why it couldn't be anything further from the truth, and why the most rebellious and best thing that you can do in life and for your mental health and for all those goals that you want to achieve and to have a meaningful life, the best thing you can do is to fall in love with yourself first. The best thing you can do for your relationships, for your friendships, for your career, for your health, is to fall in love with yourself first. And in this episode, I want us to go over a few things. So mainly, I want us to acknowledge how we live in this world that tends to train us to seek validation and love and worthiness externally, aka from our jobs, from our partners, from our friends, from whoever it is that you see as being really better than yourself. We're trained to seek that validation outside of ourselves. And yet, in terms of sustainability and how you can feel good most of the time, what's the most sustainable way to feel good most of the time? It is loving yourself. And I want to break this down. I want to break down and help you, because this is an exact journey that I've been through. And I think it's so important to acknowledge that I am doing my best to make this podcast for you, but I'm also doing it to make these things for a past or a young version of myself who believed some of these false things, and it kept me small, it kept me limited. And I see that in so many people, and I see it in so many past versions of myself. And I'm making that and making this episode specifically for all of those people who've been told that it's selfish or cringy or shameful to love yourself. And I have to acknowledge how much I struggled with even just the word self-love, how much I struggled with the idea of self-love. Even being in this space and doing what I do, I used to preach consistently that I think self-love is bullshit. If you go back to my content a couple of years ago, you will see that I've made reels and videos about how self-love is this idea that's unreachable. And really what's happened for me over the coming years after that has been gaining a deeper understanding of what self-love is and how powerful it really is for your mental health, for your well-being, for your relationships with people, and for ultimately just feeling good and feeling capable, feeling resilient, getting through life's challenges, going through the ups and downs, all of it. So let's dive in. The myths and the misconceptions of self-love. And I have to put my hand up here and say, I was taught these things, I listened to them, I believed them, I internalized all of them. And you might be sort of sitting here nodding along with me and going, yeah, okay, I did too, but I want you to stop there and I want you to turn your listening ears on and really acknowledge the false ideas and beliefs that you have created or that you've heard or that you've seen, that you've internalized and you've absorbed about self-love. And you might be feeling even a little bit triggered right now saying this word and talking about it so many times. You're probably feeling like, I want to bloody leave this episode. I want to go listen to something else that's just easier and safer and not as uncomfortable as addressing the societal narrative that isn't helping you. And in the last episode, we talked about being in the chaos of change, and I shared with you how as human beings we don't like to change. Not only do we not like to change our lives, but we also don't like to change our beliefs. We don't like to change our mindset. We don't like to change our practices, our habits. We encounter resistance, and if you're encountering resistance right now, please stay with me. Please take a breath, because I guarantee you that this episode, not only is it going to be short and snappy, but it's going to have some really meaningful things in it for you that could change your life. It's a big statement to make, I know, but it could. So stay with me here. I know that I personally was taught that self-love is a selfish, arrogant, embarrassing, cringeworthy act. The version of self-love that I used to see was somebody frolicking with flowers in their hair in a field and preaching #love and light. And that's what I used to see. And it's completely false. And that vision put me off. Oh my God, did it put me off? Because I didn't want to be that person. I didn't want to be #love, light, toxic positivity. And that's what I thought it was. I thought it was toxic positivity. And I also felt really ashamed of myself because it felt so out of reach. It felt so out of reach to be loving and kind to myself. It felt so out of reach to even think about the fact of loving myself. It was kind of like a two-layered thing. And I wonder if you experienced this too. It was like, well, yeah, of course I love myself. Duh. But then I went to the next layer, and I want you to do that now too. And the next layer was, I don't love myself. All the actions, the voices in my head, the way I'm treating myself, the standards that I'm holding, the words that I'm speaking and thoughts that I'm having towards myself, the behaviors that I'm putting up with externally, all that from that information, I don't love myself. And that was the most confronting thing when it came to self-love. And I think why for so long I had that really false belief of what self-love is, which was toxic positivity, #love and light, the vision of someone with flowers in their hair, frolicking in a field, hand on heart, that sort of cheesy definition of it. Why that was stuck in my brain for so long was because it was a deterrent. It was something that stopped me from having to address the fact that from my behaviors and my actions and my choices, that they were not coming from a person that loved themselves. Facing that fact that I didn't love myself, when we kind of should, right? If we're going to love other people in our lives, we have to love ourselves first. And to be able to love them right and to do right by them and to be in positive relationships, we have to love ourselves first. So I was really taught this message, and we could go into the why and how I learned that, but I think it's pretty clear where we've learned those messages from. And if you look at it from the lens of why would it be beneficial to keep women, especially and specifically, and minorities, why it's beneficial is to have people not love themselves is because when people don't love themselves, they don't challenge things, they don't ask questions, they follow. They go along with the herd. They are sheep. They're not disruptors. They don't think outside of the box. They don't make a nuisance by being difficult. And again, that's what I thought. A person that loved themselves and had boundaries, I used to think that they were difficult people. They should just be followers and agreeable and go along with everything else and make things easy, right? How dare they? Which is just so not true. But this message that we've received about self-love, that I received, and I wonder if you received, and I wonder if you can think about where and when and how and what that looks like for you. Remember that message, it serves a purpose. It serves to keep you small. It serves to keep you following in the path that is the most easily controllable. And reality is, people that love themselves, they are more difficult. They aren't sheep. They don't follow the rules. They live different kinds of lives. They value themselves. They set boundaries. And they go after what they want and what's important to them, which might be different than what your average person wants in life. And that's threatening and scary to a society like ours. The other myth that I want to address is that myth of external validation, that real love is earned from other people. That self-love or loving words or actions from you aren't as valuable or important as love from other people. And if you just, again, let that sink in for a second, right? Like, do I think that receiving loving words from other people, is that better than the loving words I could give myself? And right here, right now, I have to acknowledge that there's parts of me that believe that to be true. And it's a constant effort to challenge myself to put those on equal footing, to put love coming from myself as being important, and to see that the love that I give myself and the love that other people give me, they don't deserve to be in comparison to each other. They also don't need to be competing with each other. All love is good love, and it just fills up your cup even more. But I think the difficulty is that we can't control how much other people are going to love us. We cannot control how much validation and support and praise that they give us. We can't control how much they fill up our cup when we need it. It's not a sustainable strategy to feel good, to feel well. It's not a sustainable strategy. You have no control over it. It's beautiful when it comes in and you get to receive it fully, but you also get to remember that you are the one that you're going to spend the most time with. Think about how, you literally accompany yourself. That voice inside your head is with you. You're in 24 hours a day. For the rest of your life, you're with you. You are the friend that you have to take everywhere you go. You're also in control of the way that you speak and treat yourself, even though sometimes it can feel like you aren't. And I want to acknowledge that too. The final thing I want to say here about these myths is that it's cute to be self-deprecating and it's vain to be self-loving. I know that it can be a really good strategy, a good disarming strategy to kind of make people accept and like you, to be self-deprecating, to make fun of yourself, to speak about yourself in a way that is slightly negative, with maybe a lot of humor in there. And the reality about that is that that's really disarming to other people. And it can make people feel better about themselves. It can make them feel like it's okay. But I think there's a difference between being self-deprecating versus being vulnerable about how hard life is sometimes. And it's not vain to love yourself. It's not vain to be proud of yourself. It's not vain. Self-love is the foundation of safety, self-worth, and resilience. It really is. And there are a lot of systems in place that we get to acknowledge that encourage an over-reliance. So how you feel about yourself, your self-image, that's made up by what other people think about you and how other people treat you, which you have no fucking control over, which is so sad. There's this phrase which I sort of get triggered by, but I also think it's really important to say here, which is about taking your power back. And this phrase can be used in really fucking negative ways, and I don't want to use it in that way. What I want to use it in a way is taking back your power when it comes to self-love. It's not about, shutting yourself off to the love of others. It's not about building, having these ridiculously high boundaries that end up being walls around your heart and isolate you. That's not what it's about. It's about realizing that you have a choice to be kind and loving towards yourself, or you have a choice to continue being critical towards yourself. There's a choice there. And I know sometimes it feels like it's not a choice. And we're going to go into those strategies a little bit later. But those are the myths. Those are the misconceptions that we have about self-love, that I have about self-love. And there's probably a million more. That it's egoic, that the love we get from other people is more important and it's worth more than the love we give ourselves. So we should just focus on working so hard to fucking please other people rather than actually focusing on being kind to ourselves. And they're really damaging. They're really, really damaging. And I want you to sit here for a second, and if you can hit pause, if you have 30 seconds to actually just list out, like, genuinely, what's my definition of self-love? What is that false version of self-love that I believe that's keeping me from practicing it, from valuing the love I give myself and putting energy into it, putting energy into changing how much love you give yourself, putting energy into yourself rather than continuing to put so much energy into seeking love, approval, validation from other people by doing what they want you to do, by speaking how they want you to speak, by acting how they want you to act, by making fun of yourself to make someone else feel better, The second thing I want to talk about here, which can be very confusing, is two big buzzwords: self-love versus self-care. Self-love is not a bubble bath. Self-love is not going for a walk and doing your meditation and drinking more water. That is all self-care, which is so fucking important, but they are very different things. Self-love is the way that you treat and speak to yourself when no one else is watching. It's that consistent voice and attitude towards yourself inside your head, inside your heart, that you live with all day, every day. It's that voice when you're in the shit, when you're feeling low and blue like I had been feeling this week, self-love is that voice. Self-love is how you treat yourself in those moments. It's whether you choose to say, I could have easily gone down the road this week of saying, Kathleen, you have a roof over your head. You've got money in your bank account. You've got friends that love you. You've got a healthy body. There's no reason for you to be sad. There's no reason for you to be feeling blue. That's so silly. Why would you feel that way? There's that versus the self-acceptance, the support, the love, the time that I gave myself this week. The Ted Lasso that I gave myself this week. It's really different. The attitude that I approached this week with. What is the attitude that you approach yourself with? What is the voice or the thoughts inside your head that show up when you're feeling sad or when you're feeling blue? How do you speak to yourself? How much energy do you put into self-care? And how much energy do you put into self-love? How much energy do you put into developing and building that mindset of love and respect and care for yourself? Third thing I want to run through, and I've spoken about it, but it's I think a big foundation of self-love is about that inner voice. Self-love is shat on by the part of you that is the inner critic. Self-love is destroyed by the inner critic, that harsh voice that probably so often says, you're not enough, why even try, you're just too much. And it's very fucking easy to believe this voice because it can feel very familiar if you are someone that struggles with having an inner critic. That word might be brand new to you, or it might be something you're aware of, but I've been doing some consistent work with an amazing client, and we were talking about how creative the inner critic can get and how sometimes it can take a while to recognize them. You might be very in this work, you might have dealt with your inner critic, you might have been working on it, but the inner critic can show up in so many ways, in very sneaky ways, and it takes a lot of practice to be really in tune with kind of auditing that voice in your head to see what its general mood is today and who's in control. And I always use the analogy when it comes to the inner critic and doing parts work, because the inner critic is a part of ourselves. Always use the analogy of imagining that you're in a car and whoever is driving, whatever part of you is driving the steering, who's got the wheel in their hands of that car, that is you, that part has control over the direction that you go in. They're the voice that you hear the most. They're the one that the thoughts, the inner monologue inside your head, the stories, the reasons, that's where that's coming from, is whatever part of you is driving the car. And parts work is so powerful because it allows you to, one, recognize, oh my God, my inner critic, this really harsh voice, this really, traumatized, harsh, difficult, mean bully of a voice, that's the part of me that's driving this car and steering me in the direction that I am going in life, overall life. They're the ones that are making the decisions. Parts work enables you to imagine, if you can imagine yourself being in the passenger seat, looking at the steering wheel and going, why the hell is that inner critic part of me driving my life? Why are they making the decisions? Why are they running the show? Because they're not going to steer you anywhere good. They're going to steer you to a place that feels familiar, where you feel small and where it might feel technically a little bit safe. Parts work is awesome because it enables you to start thinking about, how can I work with that part of me, get them out of the driver's seat and put my real, true, self-loving damn self into the driver's seat and steering. And that is what I hope that this episode encourages you to do today. And we're going to talk about the strategy that I want you to implement to do this. There's one checkpoint that you can use, one question that you can use to query if your inner critic is driving. And it's a good checkpoint because it will get you to turn the fuck around and to really see what's happening inside your own head and your own inner world. And that question is, would you ever speak to a friend like this? If you just take a couple minutes each day to just jot down the thoughts in your head, the stories it's telling you, the reasons it's coming up with, whatever jumbo mumbo stuff is just sitting there in your head at that point in time, if you take a few minutes each day to jot that down, to make some notes, it will help you click into this level of self-awareness where you can ask that checkpoint question and you can query, who's in the driver's seat of my head right now? Would you ever speak to a friend the way that you've been speaking to yourself? For me, often the answer is fuck no. Absolutely fuck no. I would never say the things that I'm saying to myself. The inner critic was one of the most difficult pieces that I struggled with and I didn't realize was so powerful in my inner world for probably since my early teens, I'd say. Even in intermediate, when I was 11 or 12, I remember having these thoughts that were really horrific and cruel to myself. And it makes life so much harder. So use that checkpoint of a question. Would you ever speak to a friend like this? And I know it sounds almost basic, but you would be surprised at how powerful it can be. Because if that answer is fuck no, you need to change out who is driving. You need to make sure that you're putting the self-loving part of you in the driver's seat. Now, some really helpful things that you can do here. You've got 1, that checkpoint. 2, from there, name the inner critic. Name that there is a part of you that is highly critical, and I often encourage clients to give this part of themselves a name, and it could be something ridiculous like, Cruella de Vil. It could be the bully you had in high school. It could simply just be the word critic. It could be saboteur is also what it's known as. It's helpful to name it so that you can get some distance from it. It's really hard to change something that you can't see clearly. And to see something clearly, you need to have a bit of space from it. You need to sort of make sure that it's over there and you're here looking at it rather than being inside of it. And a way that you can do that is 1, that checkpoint question. Would you ever speak to a friend like this? It'll zoom you right out. 2, give it a name. Say hello to it. Say, oh my God, my inner critic is here and they're present. The inner critic is so misunderstood. However, I want to say it can be really easy to hate on this part of yourself, but the reality is that it is a part of you. There is an episode that I did a while ago on the inner critic that dives more into this, and I'll put that link in the show notes. And I'm also going to put in some practices that, I love practices, self-guided audios that can support you through this. I'm going to put some of those in the show notes as well, if this is something that you're struggling with the inner critic. But the second that you name it, that you recognize it, you can invite yourself to do something different, to change things, to do something differently in that moment. And this is where the final point that I want to jump into is about the science of self-compassion. So self-love for me makes sense by using the word self-compassion. I'd say it's probably the main thing that I do to be loving towards myself has been learning to be compassionate instead of being critical, and to put that compassionate part in the driver's seat when I need it, to be able to call upon it when I need it, to have that as an automatic reaction when I'm like this week, when I'm feeling blue. Imagine how shitty my week would have been if I had listened to that inner critic, if I would have let it run wild, versus the acceptance and the compassion that I showed myself this week. And that compassion led me to reach out to people and get some connection. It led me to making some choices that helped me rather than hindered me. It changed everything. And Dr. Kristen Neff has done a lot of research on self-compassion, and it's been proven and shown that self-compassion is really well linked to lower levels of anxiety, depression, perfectionism, and it's also linked to higher levels of motivation and resilience. MRI studies show that increased activity in areas linked to emotional regulation, so i.e. how you feel, when practicing self-compassion. Self-compassion is so much more sustainable, like so much more of a sustainable form of motivation to get yourself to change than shame or criticism ever will be. There's, and this is a classic example, Nike's ad and tagline, just do it, right? You can hear that in many different tones. You can interpret that based on you and who you are and like what your world looks like and how you're brought up and your belief systems. You could hear just do it in a very different tone. For me, when I say just do it to myself, it's coming from the inner critic. It's a just do it, just fucking do it, you idiot, come on, just do it. And it often shows up when I'm anxious about something that I shouldn't be. When I notice that I don't want to pick up the phone to call the dentist to book an appointment, I would rather send an email because it's easier. And that attitude of just do it for me is really harmful. And although it's worked in my past, that level of shame and criticism was how I used to motivate myself to change. And guess how long those changes lasted for, folks? I think you can have a really good guess. When I shamed myself into making change, when I said, come on, just do it. Come on, just pick up that phone. Or come on, just go and exercise. Or come on, eat healthier. Don't eat that chocolate bar. Come on, record that podcast, All those things, they worked in the short term and they damaged me in the long term. Sometimes it would feel like I would get a step forward because I would do it, technically. But the aftermath of it was really difficult. And so I want you to think about how you hear that phrase or how you deal with yourself, how you speak to yourself and treat yourself when you're in a moment of anxiety or difficulty or struggle or a challenge, or when you want to motivate yourself to change. It's super quick and easy to go into that self-shaming road than it is to say, I believe in you. I know that this is tough and I know that it feels hard, but I want you to know I believe in you and I'm here to support you. If you can think back to your favorite teacher at school, I can think back to a couple who were really amazing. And it's because they were so kind and compassionate and accepting. When I think about my favorite friends and the friends that I've been around the longest and the most valuable relationships that I've had in my life, the ones that I feel have truly changed me at my core, those friends are all so compassionate and supporting of me. And that support and compassion from other people and then learned from myself, it's gotten me to move through challenging stuck pieces so much faster and with less resistance than pushing myself to change from that angle of criticism and really demeaning sort of tone, if you know what I mean. So have a think about what are your levels of self-compassion like. And if you are embarking on this journey of self-love, if you've sat here in this episode and you've gone, fuck me, I've got some really big blocks to self-love. I've got some really false ideas about it. I think it's cringe and shameful and stupid. However, I have to acknowledge that I am really reliant on external validation, that I do a lot to please other people in the hopes that they will give me that thing that will make me feel better, and I'm tired, right? Like maybe you've been hustling in your job and you've been doing everything you can to get that love. I'm going to go back to Ted Lasso, but a great example of this is the character Nathan Shelley, the coach that has a very interesting kind of really cool character arc, but they start off getting there's someone who obviously have very little levels of self-worth and self-esteem, who I imagine struggle deeply with an inner critic in the beginning of the show. And then he meets Ted Lasso, who is kind and compassionate and supportive, and they see them and they celebrate them, and everything changes for them and they become much more successful. They get this promotion, now they're feeling so much better. And then you see Ted Lasso's also then hires someone else, and he doesn't have as much time. And, Ted Lasso's going through his own stuff. He doesn't have as much time to put into Nate. And Nate, the character, ends up feeling horrific and ends up turning into a bit of an evil character and does some really questionable things that isn't really part of their actual morals. But because they were so heavily reliant on that external source of validation, it hurt them so fucking much that they became cruel and they started to seek revenge, which was so opposite of who their character was at their core. And we see this over-reliance on external validation in the way that we work and in relationships and friendships and social media. We see the effort and energy that we can put into getting a little high, right? Getting a little high when people are like, oh my God, you're so amazing, or that's so cool that you did that, or, you've got a promotion, you're getting a pay rise, or you've got 10,000 followers from this reel that went viral, or, whatever your version of that is. It is a high. It's a high, and it feels really good to get that from other people. But as we have seen with Nate, this character in Ted Lasso, I hope you fucking watch the show, or it's not going to make sense. But what we see is his over-reliance on that external validation. So he had no self-worth, no self-esteem. His cup was completely empty. He had no idea how to be loving towards himself. I imagine that he would struggle deeply with an inner critic. And his way of motivating himself in moments of fear and anxiety, he does this thing where he spits. He does this. It's very interesting to psychologically look at that practice, but he spits at himself in the mirror. And it is, for me, I hear that thing of like, just do it. Like, stop being a fucking sissy. Just do it. I feel that energy from that thing that he does. And it comes from that inner place of shame and criticism to push himself to be better, to push himself to get over his fears and anxieties, which we all have as being human. And it takes him down this horrific road, right, where he is working for the devil and he's really cruel and he's mean and his relationships all suffer and he ends up being really sad. And this is because he had no foundation and no loving practice within himself. When Ted stopped filling up his cup with that validation, his cup was empty and he was sad and hurt that was happening and lashes out, right? And so this is where we have to see that we have no control over the people in our lives and how much love they are capable of giving us. If you think about, maybe you're in a relationship, if you expect your partner to be your world, to be your everything, if you expect them to be able to bring you up when you're feeling down, that's a lot of fucking pressure to put on someone. Have you ever heard the phrase kind of an energy sucker in terms of friendships? You might feel this too, but it's like they drain all the energy from you. And that's again because their cup is empty. And we know that having a relationship like that leads to codependency, and it's a really negative experience to have in a relationship. It's a real challenge, and it impacts the relationship, and it impacts the meaning and the love that is able to be shared, because reality is life is hard, and even the brightest, shiniest of people, like we see with Ted Lasso, even the brightest, shiniest, most giving people like Ted Lasso, they go through stuff. They can't be your everything. They can't be your world. They can't be your foundation. You are the constant in your own life. People are going to leave. People are going to move away. People are going to go through things. You're also going to have to step up sometimes and be that for other people, right? I'm sure having kids is a really interesting impact on this too. What I'm saying here is put just as much, if not more, effort into making sure you have a solid foundation of love within yourself, making sure that you've done that work to be compassionate and kind, and to learn how to work with that critical part of you, to understand what's going on with it, to understand why it's being so critical, what it needs, and how you can support all parts of you to be a more harmonious system working together to achieve your goals from a place of love rather than from a place of fear. And fucking watch your life change. I'm going to end it there, and there is a practice in the show notes, a self-compassion practice. If you are someone that has struggled with being compassionate and you want to work on creating a more compassionate inner voice, that practice is a great place to start. And as always, please reach out if you have any questions or queries, or if you're interested in doing some of this work together one-to-one to support you in building that foundation in yourself and learning some of this stuff. I'd love to support you. I want to remind you that you're amazing, that you're doing so well, and that the world may not have taught you that you're allowed to love yourself or taught you how to love yourself, but you can. And when you do, you will stop settling, you will stop shrinking, and you will start thriving. And that's why I called this Getting Higher on Your Own Supply. So share this episode around with a friend. Let me know what your takeaways are, and I'll speak to you soon. I'll see you next week on Monday. Thanks for listening.